Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Stu's Music Quiz for the 70s. Yes, the whole decade. Just to remind you, this is an online music quiz to raise money for Young Minds UK. 50 questions. There's another there's another video cast with an answers thing, so you can check out how many you got. And at the same time, just a reminder, we are kind of slightly attached to Richard Shaw's, in this case, 7 albums from the 70s. So if you want to take part in that, it's on Friday the 1st of January, I believe, that we are submitting our favourite 7 albums of the 70s. And hopefully you get a lot of ideas from here, but otherwise just have a lot of fun, hopefully testing your knowledge of the decade in which certainly I was born. And many people believe the greatest decade that music has yet produced. And I take a slightly different approach this week in the quiz. Rather than just dividing into different rounds of different types of questions, because the 70s was a time in which music kind of broke into a very distinct genre. That's what I've done. I've broken the quiz into groups of different genre. So hopefully something in there will tickle your fancy and you'll know a little bit more about a particular area. Maybe you'll know something about all of it, but we'll give it a go as we go along. We'll start off with some trivia questions here for you about the decade as a whole. Let's start with which act achieved the most number ones of the decade, and that was 7 number ones in the decade, and I believe they are they hold the record, or they are second place, I think, for the most consecutive number ones with 6 as well. Okay, the most number ones of the decade. Number 2. What was the biggest selling album of the decade? So at the end of the 70s, what was the biggest selling album released in the 70s? That's in the UK, remember. Okay, and a slightly different question, number 3. If you take it up to now, which 70s album has now sold the most? It's not the same. Up to the present day, which 1970s album has now sold the most copies? So not the biggest selling 70s album of the 70s, but the biggest selling 70s album right up to the present day. Okay, now what about singles? Well, it was the decade of singles, wasn't it, really? Singles were huge at the time, and actually, and yeah, 3 of the 4 biggest selling singles of all time were released in the 70s. Okay, now which of these is not on the list? Which of these is not on the list of the 4 biggest selling singles of all time? Okay, and the last trivia question. It's a person. Who connects the 2 biggest selling movie soundtracks of the 70s? Okay, right, so moving to our first category. Here we go, our first genre. It is prog rock. Prog rock. Wow, yeah, bit of long hair, bit of real ale. Absolutely, get it all together and sit and listen carefully without tapping any of your feet. And we've got prog rock. It was huge, wasn't it, in the early part of the 70s in particular. Some love it, some hate it. Well, how well do you know about it? Let's take question 6 first of all. There you go. There's our proggy album, a big proggy album. But what is it? What's the name of the album? What's the name of the artist? You can have half a mark for each. So if you can't remember which album, but you know who it was by, I'll give you half for that. I'm feeling generous. It's nearly Christmas after all. Okay, so that's naming the album from its cover. Okay, now naming the album from my clues, my kind of dingbats clues here. So take these three pictures together, put them together, have a think, maybe slightly cryptically in some cases, and which prog album are they clues for? Now, reminder at this point, I move through relatively quickly as we go along. Feel free to pause, of course. You're not cheating if you do. If you want to take a little bit more time, let the old brain cells work. Okay, number 8, some proggy lyrics. And my goodness me, aren't lyrics exciting in the prog era? I could have done a huge number here, but there we go. Right, here I've gone for. Can you tell me where my something lies? Said the unifawn to his true love's eyes. Can you tell me where my lies? Said the unifawn to his true love's eyes. Is that a fawn that's gone to university? I think it's meant to be a unicorn child, isn't it? But never mind. My feelings are for that lyrics thing there. You're going to have to be a fan of the group to be able to get that. Maybe not so much for this one. Here's a massive seller. Who was the master of ceremonies on Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells? The master of ceremonies. Guy who came on in the middle of it and announced a load of instruments as they appeared, you might remember. Who was it, though? And I will accept that bloke from, as long as you finish, obviously, where he's from. And final prog one. We could not have Dark Side of the Moon, could we? Progtastic. I've got 4 facts here for you about the Dark Side of the Moon, but sneakily one of them isn't true. Is it that Money is the only song in 7/4 time to make the UK top 40? 7 crotchet to the bar. Or is it B, that Dark Side of the Moon was partially responsible for Monty Python and the Holy Grail? Or is it C, that the album was originally called Eclipse and was only changed after another group used the same name of the album? Or is it that D, Paul McCartney was originally on the album, but his contribution was cut? Which of those facts about Dark Side of the Moon is not true? Okay, so if prog's not your thing, maybe you're going to go a bit further with disco. There you go, disco right at the end of the 70s. It seems that punk made the way mostly for disco to come in and take over. It was huge for a very brief period, wasn't it? Before, particularly in America, the disco sucks movement got it. Disco sucks movement, a little bit racist, yeah, possibly. Anyway, here is a disco album cover. Can you tell me what is the name of the artist? What is the name of the album? Half mark as usual for each. This disco classic. We're back to the dingbats here. Now remember, this one's a little bit, I've just been playing a little bit with this one. It is very much almost say what you see, but not quite exactly. You have to think through it. I'd certainly remind yourself that this is a well-known disco album of the late 70s. Okay. Number 13 is a disco lyric question. No prizes for knowing the song. We're Lost in Music. Feel So Alive. I Quit. What? We're Lost in Music. What did they quit? We're Lost in Music. Feel So Alive. I Quit. What? We're Lost in Music. No prizes for knowing the track. the people, even the producer. Just the lyrics. Talking of that producer, what was the original version of the chant Freak Out in Chic's Le Freak? When it was first written, the original version of the chant Freak Out. So in other words, it wasn't Freak Out. What was it instead? In Chic's Le Freak. And to conclude our disco questions, the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Just like Dark Side of the Moon before, one of the huge albums of the 70s. Absolutely massive, and many of us remember it. Here's 4 facts about that, and one of them isn't true. Is it that A, the Bee Gees were not involved in the film at all until post-production? Is it B, although it was on the album, the sequence involving jive talking was cut from the film? Is it C, that it's the biggest selling soundtrack of all time? Or is it D, that Disco Inferno was inspired by the film, The Towering Inferno? Which of those facts about the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack is not true? Okay, our disco grooving's over. What's next is glam. We're going right back to the beginning of the 70s now. Glam rock, very much mocked and laughed at now, mostly because of the costumes, but there was a lot of decent music in there. And of course, you know, you can't count out Bowie and Roxy Music and the like from the movement as well, even though we do remember some people that we'd rather not remember in there. Okay, let's have a look at 5 questions on glam rock. Let's have a look at number 16. Here's a classic album for you, big and glammy. But what's the album and who is it by? Half a mark for each. What's this album and who was it by? We're back to the dingbats again. Which glam album am I representing through these clues? Lyrics. Right. Cracking glam song. No prizes again for guessing or recognising the song, but you've got to finish the line. Well, you're built like a car. You've got to... Well, you're built like a car. You've got to... Tell you one thing we're learning from the lyrics rounds, of lyrics questions so far, is that the 70s wasn't really a great lyrics decade, was it? Or maybe it was, and we just not got the right songs. Anyway, number 19. Which glam star of the 70s was born Bernard Jury, but was first known professionally as Shane Fenton? So you don't know him by either of those names. Which glam star was born Bernard Jury, but was first known professionally as Shane Fenton? And to round off our glam round, the Mike Chapman-Nicky Chinn partnership. Chapagin, I think it's referred to as, wrote, most of the glam hits of the period. It certainly seemed to suit them. But there's one up there that wasn't written by them. Which one is it? So, did they write Blockbuster by The Sweet? Did they write Tiger Feet by Mud? Did they write Can the Can by Susie Quattro? Or did they write See My Baby Jive by Wizard? Which 3 of those did they write? Which one did they not write? There we go. From glam to punk. I'm trying to give you a bit of variety here, aren't I? So Again, we've got rock, but a very different kind of thing. Punk, of course, exploding onto the scene. Different people will tell you it exploded in different ways from different periods, whether you go to the New York Dolls or the Ramones or the Pistols or whoever, or the Damned. Wherever you say it came from, punk, certainly in the definition that we would use it in the UK, was a massive deal for a brief period of time in the 70s. Let's have 5 questions on punk, starting with this album. Do you recognise it? I need the album, I need the artist. Half a mark for each, please. Back to our dingbats here. Okay, again. Look what there is there. Put it together, see if you can find a punk album from that. Here we go. Lyrics. Wow. You better paint your face. Know what in 1977? You better paint your face. Know what in 1977? And number 24, our trivia question. The Damned. Who was the Damned's very unpunk first choice to produce their second album, Music for Pleasure? He didn't do it, so turn them down. But their approach, their first choice to produce their second album, Music for Pleasure, not a very punk character. Who was it? I'm going to give you a clue here. It wasn't Cliff Richard. Okay. Number 25. The Sex Pistols gig at Manchester Free Trade Hall on the 4th of June 1976 has passed into legend, doesn't it? Not least because of the Michael Winterbottom film, the Factory Records film, that's Tony Wilson's story. However, he claims Tony Wilson in the film claims these 4 people were all there. There's been a very good book, actually, interesting book written on that gig, which breaks the kind of the kind of myth of it, because there were about 40 odd people there, and apparently in print there's something like 7,000 people who've claimed to be there. 3 of these were there. There is proof that they were there. One of them wasn't. So which 3 were there? Which one wasn't? Okay, the legendary Sex Pistols gig, Manchester Free Trade Hall, 4th of June 1976. Only 40 or so people there. Supposedly kick-started, a number of important bands. Which 3 of those were there? Which one wasn't? Okay, we're halfway through now. So don't forget, we have an answers post as well. When you've finished this and you've got your written answers to the questions, go on to the answers post, have a look, see obviously how well you've done. At the same time, though, be aware that I try and give you some interesting facts about things, some little stories that I picked up in my research you may or may not know. And of course, some listening recommendations, whether you are taking part in the 7 albums for the 1970s poll or not. Just some albums to get out there and listen to. And please also at the same time, don't forget to subscribe to us. Okay, please don't forget to like or comment on this. And please don't forget to donate to Young Minds UK. I put a lot of time into this, as you can imagine, hopefully to entertain you. But also because I want to raise money for this. So please help in any way you can to spread the word, get out there, tell all your friends about it, come back each week, subscribe so you know when they're coming, give it a go, and just bung me a couple of quid either each week or every now and again a bit more would be really, really helpful. I'm trying to get to £1,000. It's a slow start at the moment, but we've got some in there. It would be very helpful, especially this Christmas, if you could just donate a little bit more. And talking of Christmas, I did a special Christmas quiz, which is still up there. If you're listening to this now, I'm recording it with 4 days to go. If you're still at home, maybe you've been stuck in tier 4, maybe you were planning on having a big Christmas with loads of other people and you can't do it, maybe you're having to do it remotely now. Well, why not throw my Christmas quiz into this? This is about Christmas music, which we all listen to every year, whether we want to or not. It will test really what you know, how well you know it, and hopefully give you a little bit of fun along the way as well. More excitement than Shakin' Stevens Christmas jumpers. Okay, back to the second half of the quiz. Hope you got a beer in front of you, some snacks. Ready for pop. You see, if like me, you like to listen to Pick of the Pops at the weekend when it's on Radio 2, the charts from these various years, you'll know that the 70s was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde decade. Albums wise, whoa, incredible, unbelievable. Almost impossible to pull down to a few albums, to 7 albums you want to choose. But the charts, pop music in the 70s was a different matter. There were some nuggets out there, but it was like a different world, wasn't it? Let's have 5 questions to see how well you know. I think this will be biased slightly more towards people who grew up in the 70s, shall we say. Okay, let's go for this album and artist. You might immediately be horrified I'm calling this pop, but I am calling this pop. Whose album is this? What is the name of the album? Half a mark for each. And I like it, so no comments about it being balls. Anyway, 27. I dingbats for you again. Name this wonderful pop album. Wonderful pop album from the 70s. '28. Lyrics. Oh, you got to remember this classic. And he painted matched up men and matched up cats and dogs. He painted kids on the corner of the street that were doing what? He painted matched up men and matched up cats and dogs. He painted kids on the corner of the street that were doing what? Little bonus task for you here as well. Can you tell me the Baron Knights version of those lyrics? First ever single I own that. Okay, 29. A trivia question. The TV cop who had 2 #1 hits in 1977. It's a good question actually, because of course there was another TV cop who had a #1 hit, one #1 hit in the 70s. But which TV cop had 2 #1 hits in 1977? I would love to have been able to ask the question, #1 music hits and #1 TV show of 1977, but apparently the #1 TV show of 1977 was Mike Yarwood's Christmas special. So there you go. And it's not, the answer is not Mike Yarwood. And here we go. Look at these. It was the decade of the teeny boppers. It was the decade of the teeny boppers. Right, hopefully you recognise all 4 of those. They all had #1s. But which one of them had the fewest UK #1s? Shall I tell you who they are? Or make you know yourself? I'm surely you know them. Surely you can see that's David Cassidy. That's the Osmonds. It's the Bay City Rollers. And David Essex. Which had the fewest UK #1s? Okay, right. From pop to hard rock and metal. My goodness, didn't that explode in the 70s? Coming out of its beginnings in the late 60s. Really went for it. I put the two together because obviously there's a lot of argument over what's hard rock, what's metal, what's whatever, but we're along those lines anyway. 5 questions on those, starting with this album and artist, this classic album and artist from the beginning of the 70s. Half a mark for the name of the album, half a mark for the name of the artist, please. Now back to me dingbats again. Another classic hard rock album from the 70s being represented for you through these clues. What is the album? And the lyrics. And as we wind on down the road, our shadows taller than our souls, there walks a lady we all know who shines white light and wants to show what? What does she want to show? A real classic song. You can see I'm being generous to you this week. I've not really gone very obscure, have I? But what does she want to show? That lady who shines white light. Okay, number 34. Here's a cracker of a question. Which classic rock track, and it is a classic rock track, is actually a true story based on how a Swiss casino burnt down during a Frank Zappa and Mothers of Invention concert as the band watched from their hotel room? Apologies, I looking at that, I'm going to blame that on autocorrect there for the way it's changed Frank Zappa's, the spelling Frank Zappa's surname. I do not think that is how you spell Frank Zappa, please. Do not think that. Anyway, back to the question. What a fantastic question it is. Which classic rock track is a true story of how a Swiss casino burnt down during a Frank Zappa and Mothers Invention concert while the band who sang it watched from their hotel room? Yes, one of the greatest rock tracks of the 70s is that story. And 35, here's some big hard rockers. But only 3 of them topped the US album charts in the 70s. Which one didn't? Was it A, The Who, B, Led Zeppelin, C, Bad Company, or D, Jethro Tull? Which one of those did not top the US album charts in the 70s? Okay, hopefully I've hit a genre that you like to this point. If not, a couple more to go. Good luck with them. The next one is country rock. There we are. I've gone a bit more gentle now. Country rock, and involving country as well. Just generalised country as well. Okay. Ended up being such a big seller in the 70s that many people credit it for bringing about punk rock, don't they? Okay, well, let's go with the this album and artist. And if you're sitting there going, that's not country rock, well, I say it is, so there you go. Name this album and artist. See, I do give you some easy questions sometimes, don't I? I really do. It's not all that nasty. And what's this? What album am I giving you clues to here? Country, remember. Lyrics. I want to live, I want to give. I've been a miner for what? And which country megastar did Don Henley and Glenn Frey back on a 1971 tour before they formed the Eagles? In fact, just before they formed the Eagles, they formed it later that year. Don Henley and Glenn Frey were in the backing band for which country megastar on her 1971 tour? And 1940, Sorry, number 40, 1940. Number 40, Dylan. He did some classic albums in the 70s, didn't he? Although I've not even mentioned the best one there. But which 70s Dylan album connects in some way George Harrison, Elvis Presley, and David Crosby? Which 70s Dylan album connects George Harrison, Elvis Presley, and David Crosby? Not telling you how it connects them, but it does. Is it Planet Waves? Is it Desire? Is it New Morning? Or is it Self-Portrait? And our last genre, New Wave. An almost indefinable but much maligned genre, which I tend to like very much, I think. Okay. If you don't know what it is, hopefully the answers will give it away to you. First of all, what album's this? Who's it by? Half a mark for each. Just a single picture for this album. That's all. Single picture clue. Being that, look what there are and look what there is on there, and tell me the album. Giant steps are what you take walking on the moon. Blah, 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 blah. Walking on the moon. Again, not a prize for knowing the song. I think it's pretty obvious. But do you know the missing lyric? I'm sure you do. Giant steps are what you take walking on the moon. What? Walking on the moon. And a trivia question. Which new wave saint tore up a picture of John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John on Top of the Pops when his band succeeded them at #1? Goodness me, they were rebels back then, weren't they? He tore up a picture of John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John on Top of the Pops when his band succeeded them at #1. Mind you, everyone was sick of them. It had been #1 for about 9 weeks, I think, hadn't it? And number 45. Which new wave group, although they don't like being called a new wave group or being referred to as one, but which new wave group named after a Velvet Underground album later had a bad experience being produced by John Cale? So, having named themselves after a Velvet Underground album, they ended up being produced by John Cale, but had a very bad experience doing so. Okay, our tour of genre is over. The last 5 questions are connections questions. 4 pictures or 4 things, you just have to tell me what the connection is between them. Okay, so here we have the Talking Heads album, songs about buildings and food. We have the Devo album, Are We Not Men? We have John Cale's album, Fear. And we have the album Music from the Penguin Cafe. Talking Heads, Devo, John Cale, Penguin Cafe Orchestra. What's the connection between those 4 albums? Here's some lightly looking lads. Right, so now 70s again. The connection between Rod Stewart, the Buggles, Madness, and the Rolling Stones. I'm going to be, it's too obscure this without it. So I'm going to give you the songs that are connected here. Right. So Rod Stewart's Sailing. The Buggles' Video Killed the Radio Star. Madness's One Step Beyond. And the Rolling Stones' Wild Horses. Sailing. Video Killed the Radio Star. One Step Beyond, Wild Horses. What's the connection between those 4 songs? And these artists. Okay, now number 48. Here we go. We have on the left the Stranglers, memorably described in the book The Fabulous Yeah 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 as a band who, once they'd appeared on Top of the Pops, gave you the impression that on the way home somewhere near Crystal Palace they'd put on a balaclava and rob a liquor store. To their right and up above we have Modern Lovers. Below them we have Don McLean. And on the right hand side, of course, the wonderful David Bowie. So the Stranglers, Modern Lovers, Don McLean, David Bowie. Now the connection is in songs that they released, a particular song that each one of them released. Those 4 songs have a connection. I'm not going to tell you the songs because otherwise it gives it away. But they each recorded a song at some point in the 70s that you can connect. You're struggling with that one. Don McLean might be a good starting point. That's what I'm saying. I've said with all of these, feel free to pause and ponder and think about it here. Number 49, the connection in these albums. Lodger by David Bowie, Stage Fright by the band, Frenzy by Split Enz, and Sabotage by Black Sabbath. Lodger by David Bowie, Stage Fright by the band, Frenzy by Split Enz, and Sabotage by Black Sabbath. What connection can you find in between those 4 albums? And our final question. Here's an interesting bunch for you, okay? Who have we got here? We have, as you can see up in the top there, we have Sparks. We have down in the corner there, the Undertones. We have Creedence Clearwater Revival. And we have the Kinks. Sparks, the Kinks, the Undertones, Creedence Clearwater Revival. What's the connection? All big 70s, all big bands in the 70s. What's the connection between the 4 of them? I hope you've been challenged. I hope you've enjoyed that. The answers will be posted a bit later on today if they're not already up there. Please remember to donate to my Just Giving page. Please remember to follow me on Twitter so you can find out more about these quizzes and take part in the 7, if you're not already taking part in the 7 albums for the 70s. Please give me some feedback. I always love to hear how these are going, whether you like the new approach or different approaches, or which questions work, which don't. And there's the address to donate to at the bottom there as well. Thank you so much for taking part in this quiz. Please do go and try the answers and let me know how you got on.